announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot." And the skin taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "That's so creepy, bro." Remember his mouth didn't open and close? His jaw just slid back and forth? Oh. Oh! I'm shivering in my boots! It's just like the government to gaslight these captives! Is it just me, or is it feeling kind of spooky in here? So hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Laylah. So, a few weeks back, I said two things. You know, I've read a couple creepypastas on this channel, and that's one I've never read. Maybe we should check that out next. I kind of want to put more spooky stuff on this channel. We have a couple videos, but it doesn't feel like enough, so we want to expand. So two things are coming true today in this very video. Today we're gonna get spooky, and not only are we gonna get spooky, we're gonna get spooky in the best way possible. Spooky. I kind of missed the creepypasta train growing up. I had internet access, but there was just a lot of things I never really did. And one of the stories in this video is one that I fully believed was real in middle school because a guy told me it was and showed me the photo, and I was like, huh! The Russian sleep experiment is fully a creepypasta. That is a Halloween prop. You should go check that video out, though, if you want to know more about internet mysteries. Yeah, so I've set up my lighting to be a little bit spooky. I can't tell if it's reflecting off my glasses weird, but you know, we ball. So hopefully we're all ready to get spooky. So everyone, settle in, cozy on up, grab your snacks, and let's just dive right in with creepypasta number 1. The Russian sleep experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they only had microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water in a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects, in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it. Or rather, didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside.
Okay, stop.
So you're gonna tell me, hold on, the researchers see them doing this, and they're like, you know, let's just let them keep this glass barrier keep themselves hidden from... what researcher would be like, yeah, it's totally fine that they completely obstructed our view of them, let's just leave things as they are. They literally used their own doo-doo. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. Maybe they're getting freaky in there. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." It's just like the government to gaslight these captives! To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice response. "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out amongst the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state that any of them in life. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the test subjects' thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed. While the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place, the skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. I somehow don't think you could survive that. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out, another was gravely injured by having and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subjects' teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives if you count ones that committed in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When heart was seen to beat for 2 full minutes after he bled out to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued screaming and flailed for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word "more" over and over, weaker and weaker. until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding that wrist as well. It only took a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal level of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force his own muscles had exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when someone suggested, reluctantly, they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive. Do you mean medically impossible? One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple. Keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing their surviving subjects. Their commanding officer, a former KGB agent, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering from brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwave showed the same flat lines as one who had just died from falling asleep. the commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. That seems like a critically awful idea, but okay. One of the 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things, not with you!" he screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out, "So nearly free." I feel like a lot of people have great nostalgia for these, so when I say this delicately, I feel like these are very corny. The story kind of went on and on with, like, gore, death, blah, you know, and it's good to know the origin, but at the same time, I'm like, it's crazy to think that anyone believed this was real. Anyways, on to the next one. Smile Dog was written April 28th, 2010, and I only know the image. Like, I know nothing about the story or anything else beyond that. I first met in person with Mary E. in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed, since I was not a newsman, but rather an amateur writer gathering information for a few early college assignments and, if all went according to plan, some pieces of fiction. We scheduled the interview for a particular weekend when I was in Chicago on unrelated business, but at the last moment Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door, I listening and taking notes while he attempted fruitlessly to calm his wife. The things Mary said made little sense, but fit with the pattern I was expecting. Though I could not see her, I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me centered around an incoherent diatribe on her dreams, her nightmares. Terrence apologized profusely when we ceased the exercise, and I did my best to take it in stride. Recall that I wasn't a reporter in search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could perhaps find another similar case if I put my mind and resources to it. Mary E. was the sci-sub for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system in 1992 when she first encountered smile.jpg, and her life changed forever. She and Terrence had been married for only 5 months. Mary was one of an estimated 400 people who saw the image when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS, though she's the only one who has spoken openly about the experience. The rest have remained anonymous, or are perhaps dead. In 2005, when I was only in 10th grade, smile.jpg was first brought to my attention by my burgeoning interest in web-based phenomena. Mary was the most often cited victim of what is sometimes referred to as Smile Dog. The being smile.jpg is reputed to display. What caught my interest, other than the obvious macabre elements of the cyber legend and my proclivity towards such things, was the sheer lack of information, usually to the point that people don't believe it even exists, other than as a rumor or hoax. It is unique because, though the entire phenomenon centers on a picture file, that file is nowhere to be found on the internet. Certainly many photo-manipulated simulacra litter the web, showing up with the most frequency on sites as the image board 4chan, particularly the X-focused paranormal subboard. It is suspected these are fake because they do not have the effect the true smile.jpg is believed to have, namely sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. Oh, whoa. This purported reaction in the viewer is one of the reasons the phantom-like smile JPG is regarded with such disdain, since it is patently absurd. Though depending on whom you ask, the reluctance to acknowledge smile JPG's existence might just be as much out of fear as it is out of disbelief. Neither Smile JPG nor Smile Dog is mentioned anywhere on Wikipedia, though the website features articles on such other, perhaps more scandalous shock sites such as Hello JPG or Two Girls One Cup. Any attempt to create a page pertaining to Smile JPG is deleted by any of the encyclopedia's many admins. I guess we don't want mass epilepsy. Encounters with Smile JPG are the stuff of internet legend. Mary E's story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of Smile JPG showing up in the early days of Usenet, and even one persistent tale that in 2002, a hacker flooded the forums of humor and satire website Something Awful with a deluge of Smile Dog pictures, rendering almost half the forum's user at the same time epileptic. It is also said that in the mid to late 90s, the Smile JPG circulated on Usenet as an attachment of a chain email with the subject line, "Smile! God loves you!" Yet despite the huge exposure these stunts would generate, there are very few people who admit to having experienced any of them, and no trace of the file or any link has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen Smile JPG often weakly joke that they were far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo. A dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of the camera, sits in a dim room, the only background detail that is visible being a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty, but is usually described as beckoning. Of course, most attention is given to the dog, or dog creature, as some victims are more certain than others about what they claim to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is reputedly split in a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, very human-looking teeth. I'm shivering in my boots! This is, of course, not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but rather a recollection of the victims who claim to have seen the picture endlessly repeated in their mind's eye during the time they are, in reality, having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue indeterminably, often while the victims sleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. These may be treated with medication, though in some cases it is more effective than others. Mary E., I assumed, was not on effective medication. That was why, after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I sent out feelers to several folklore and urban legend-oriented newsgroups, websites, and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of Smile JPG who felt more interested in talking about his experiences. For a long time, nothing happened, and at length I forgot completely about my pursuits since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy. Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008. Dear Mr. L, I am incredibly sorry about my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was no fault of yours, but rather my own problems that led me to act out as I did. I realize that I could have handled the situation more decorously, however, I hope you will forgive me. At that time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years, I have been haunted by Smile JPG. Smile Dog comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it is true. There is an ineffable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that makes them completely unlike any real dreams I have ever had. I do not move, and I do not speak. I simply look ahead, and the only thing ahead of me is the scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand, and I see Smile Dog. It talks to me. It is not a dog, of course, though I am not quite sure what it really is. It tells me that it will leave me alone if I only do as it asks. All I must do, it says, is spread the word. That is how it phrases its demands, and I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to someone else, and I could. The weeks after my incident, I received in the mail a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was only a 3.5-inch floppy diskette. Without having to check, I knew precisely what was on it. I thought for a long time about my options. I could show it to a stranger, a coworker. I could even show it to Terrence, as much as the idea disgusted me. And what would happen then? Well, if Smile Dog kept its word, I could sleep. Yet if it lied, what would I do? And who was to say something worse would not come for me if I did as the creature asked? So I did nothing for 15 years. Though I kept the diskette hidden amongst my things. Every night for 15 years, Smile Dog has come to me in my sleep and demanded that I spread the word. For 15 years, I have stood strong, though there have been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board, when I first encountered Smile JPG, stopped posting. I had heard some of them committed. Others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. These are the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope you forgive me, Mr. L. But last summer, when you contacted me and my husband about an interview, I was near the breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy diskette. I did not care if Smile Dog was lying or not. I wanted it to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connection with, and I thought I would not feel sorrow when you took the diskette as part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing. I was plotting to ruin your life. I could not stand the thought, and in fact, I still cannot. I am ashamed, Mr. L, and I hope that this warning will dissuade you from further investigation of Smile JPG. You may in time encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then wholly more depraved, someone who will not hesitate to follow Smile Dog's orders. Stop while you are still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. This is sad now. While cleaning up the various things she left behind, closing email accounts and the like, he happened upon the above message. He was a man in shambles. He wept as he told me to listen to his wife's advice. He found the diskette, he revealed, and burned it until it was nothing but a stinking pile of blackened plastic. The part that most disturbed him, however, was how the diskette had hissed as it melted. Like some sort of animal, he said. I will admit that I was a little uncertain how to respond to this. At first I thought it was perhaps a joke, with the couple belatedly playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. Why would you think? A quick check of several Chicago newspapers' online obituaries, however, proved that Mary E. was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of in the article. I decided that, for a time at least, I would not further pursue the subject of Smile JPG, especially since I had finals coming up at the end of May. The world has odd ways of testing us. Almost a full year after I returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E., I received another email. Hello, I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you were interested in Smile Dog. I've saw it. It is not as bad as everyone says. I've sent it to you here, just spreading the word. The final line chilled me to the bone. According to my email client, there was one file attachment called, naturally, Smile JPG. I considered downloading it for some time. It was most likely a fake, I imagined, and even if it wasn't, I was never wholly convinced of Smile JPG's peculiar powers. Mary E.'s account had shaken me, yes, but she was probably mentally unbalanced in any way. After all, how could a simple image do what Smile JPG was said to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break one's mind with only the power of the eye? And if such things were patently absurd, then why did the legend exist at all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, and if Mary turned out to be correct, if Smile Dog came to me in my dreams demanding I spread the word, what would I do? Would I live my life as Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? If I chose the latter route, how could I do it? Whom would I burden in turn? If I went through with my earlier intention to write a short article about Smile JPG, I decided I would attach it as evidence. And anyone who read the article, anyone who took an interest, would be affected. Well, you kind of sound like a D-bag. And even assuming the Smile JPG attached to the email was genuine, would I be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Could I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. I don't see the hand. Hold on, hopefully I don't have a seizure. Oh, there's the... You know, I think we've never found out who actually, what the image source is, but my theory has always been, with a lot of creepypastas, is that these were homemade images. Like, I feel like a lot of things cannot be traced back, like Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, because these are homemade images. Like, how hard would it be to actually take a photo, manipulate it, especially with the use of AI now, and turn it into an image that no one can trace back to anything else? Like, you couldn't reverse image search it or anything. Anyways, that was written really well. That plot twist at the end, he just screwed, or she, or they, whoever, just screwed everybody over in the end by making everyone who reads the article look at the image. And I got bad vibes from this person the whole story, so that was great writing. I actually loved that. Let's just continue on with our last and final creepypasta of the night. And this one is called Candle Cove. So, this one I have never even heard of. But when I was looking on the creepypasta website, it popped up as one of, like, the more popular classic ones, so I was like, okay, we'll give it a shot. And it was posted June 5th, 2009. Net Nostalgia Forum, Television, Local, 𝘬𝘩𝘢𝘯𝘯𝘦𝘭. Subject, Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike Painter, 65. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Yes, okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kinda scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll, looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Skyshale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate's shape was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock and Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face and the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea and it had that awful 𝘚𝘜𝘗𝘭𝘚 voice and laugh. I remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Ha ha ha! I remember now too. Do you remember this part, Skyshale? You have to go inside. Ugh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yeah, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was, and the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his 2 eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it just looks so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin Hart came in. Kevin Hart? I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when this show was on. Nightmare Fuel. That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he only had 1 eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then. Freaky McFreakington, the Skin Taker. What kind of kids show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton, wearing that brown top hat and cape. And his glass eyes were too big for his skull. Freak almighty. Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? What kind of show were you watching? Yeah, I think so. Remember his mouth didn't open and close? His jaw just slid back and forth? Oh. Oh, I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the skin taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "I am so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory. A bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there. But the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically and just all screaming. This girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. No, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place crying and screaming for the whole show. Again, what kind of show? Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to gosh I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Oh gosh, yes. The little girl Jess. I remember seeing her shake. And the skin taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s when I was 8 or 9 and if she remembered a kid's show, Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why, and she said, "Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm gonna go watch Cove now, Mom,' and then you would tune the TV to static, and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show." And then this is written by Chris Straub. So I'm pretty sure this is fictional. Obviously. But that was actually a really solid twist, and it's got a really good rating, so I see why this was so highly rated now. It all makes sense. At first when I was reading this, I'm like, it's just a conversation between these people, and then at the end I was like, that's so creepy, bro. That's actually so creepy though, because were these kids just like straight up hallucinating an entire show? Was there something going on in these kids' minds? It's kind of like Mr. Smile. You don't actually know what the truth is at the end. And this is something you would actually stumble across on like Reddit or some thread. 100%. But some people are saying there's a similar show out there somewhere in the world. I feel like there was also very much this vibe in like the early 2000s where kids shows were being produced quite a lot that would then end up being canceled or just go off air. So I feel like there's a lot of memories that connect to stuff like this as well, so it kind of adds to the realism. I know this takes place in the 70s, but it's like, I like that one a lot. The stories tonight were amazing, and they will all be linked down below. I love giving these people credit. One thing on the creepypasta website that scares me is that it says this is copyrighted material, and that you're not allowed to narrate or act it out without permission. I don't know how to contact the authors because some of them don't even have their names listed, so it's like, who the freak am I contacting? So I hope everyone enjoyed us revisiting creepypastas. I definitely want to do this in the future. I actually really love creepypastas, especially getting into it as an adult. There's just something about the experience of what I missed out on. Some of these stories are very corny and you read them and you go, why did I just waste 20 minutes reading? But then other ones where you're like, I see, my eyes have been opened. Genuinely one of the most fun things, I think, on this channel so far to read and check out. We haven't done many of these videos since I started the series last year. I think this is like the 4th one in an entire year's time, which is not great. It should be like at least 8. So that was super fun. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you want to go check out the stories yourself, like I said, they will be linked down below. So thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you're not too scared, and hopefully I will see you all here next time.